Let me show you how to help your Aston Martin DB9 breathe better and lose weight at the same time. In this episode of Aston1936.com, I'm going to show you how to fit a Velocity AP Airbox Delete Kit. And so basically in our Aston Martins with the V12s, there's two air filters, one for each half of the engine, and they sit inside a big bulky airbox. And these airboxes are up just in front of the wheels, down actually in this cavity here and down in this cavity here. And inside the airbox is a paper air filter. And part of our 2-year annual service is we're supposed to replace these every 2 years. It always struck me as a little odd because here's this box that's big and it's bulky and it's sitting in here and it's inside a cavity. Well, it's a cavity inside a cavity. And this thing has a weight to it. And essentially it takes its fresh air through a pipe that's in front of the grill. And that's actually smart design, is that you don't want your air filter inside the hot engine bay. Aston Martin went to the trouble to have a fresh air pipe because it's colder air out here and it's really hot heat-soaked air inside the engine bay. So they run the air into here and then the filter's inside and then it goes up into the engine. But it's a box inside a box, and I always thought this was kind of like an extra thing, almost like an extra restriction. And that's exactly what the performance people at Aston Martin worked out as well, is that the higher performance cars, they can do away with the airbox and just stick it inside, stick a high flow, high performance air filter inside the fender instead. And you get theoretically a performance improvement from that. So this is the kit from Velocity AP. And as you can see, this is a reusable mesh filter, and that's pretty cool that it's reusable. So we can, instead of these where we have to buy them for $155 a pair, we can buy one of these kits and then we can wash and re-oil this whenever we want to clean it up. So we'll spend a little bit of extra money at the beginning to get one of these kits. But then we get a weight loss from removing the box, we get less air restrictions, we get more performance, and we get a reusable filter, which is good for the environment. We aren't throwing these out. And ultimately, if you're going to have your car 4 more years, you save some money. So it's a win-win-win. Another feature I like about this kit is that it's fully reversible. It doesn't require me to modify anything on the car. So if I take the old airbox out, which is part of the process, and I decide I want to go back to the original system, I just bolt it right back in again and I take this filter back out. So that's great. I don't want to do anything to my car that requires me to drill holes or modify it in any lasting way. So that's really good. So for a pretty reasonable price, this kit's something like $260, $270, and includes all the brackets and things you're going to need to install it. And that's equivalent to about 2 sets of the paper air filters you buy from Aston Martin. So these are about $140 a set, so $280 over 4 years, or $260, $270 that will last me for way more than 4 years. Just keep reusing them. So let's go ahead and see what it takes to get this on the car. You only need a few tools to install the kit. You need a 13mm box end wrench is handy. You need a 10mm box end wrench. You need a 5/16 nut driver to do the band clamp on the air filter. You'll need a side cutter to trim the zip ties. An inspection light is really handy. You're going to need maybe a couple of disposable towels as you clean up the airbox tube, and a microfiber if you plan on polishing the chrome bits after you've got it all mounted up there with your greasy hands. So the parts I'm using for my Airbox Delete Kit came from Velocity AP. They're a Canada-based company, and they basically have these two nice high-performance high flow air filters that'll replace the factory OEM air filter kit. So basically you get two boxes. These are sort of a wire mesh, and they are pre-oiled, so you don't have to re-oil them before you put them on the car, but but they're reusable. So when you're doing your 2-year service, you can take them out, use like a typical K&N cleaning solution to clean the filters, blow dry them out, and then maybe give them a light re-oiling. So these are, I'll probably do a future article on how to service these when I get through a couple of years use. So they come and they've got a band clamp assembly. So this is going to connect to the existing mass airflow sensor tube that'll be in the car, and I'll show you that in a minute. But to stabilize them in the car, they'll be sitting there, hanging there, and the mass airflow sensor tube they connect to is just plastic. So they provided these really nicely designed, nicely welded stainless steel brackets that are going to go around the tube for the mass airflow sensor. And then they've provided some zip ties that we're going to use to strap this around and stabilize the kit. So basically it all came as part of the package, and we're going to go ahead now and put these on the car and see how they turn out. All right, well, I'm midway through the project, and I've realized that we didn't quite have the supplies figured out right. In their kit, they included 2 10-inch tie wraps to use on either side to strap the clamp to the mass airflow sensor pipe. These are fractionally not long enough. They need to be 10 1/4 inches. They need to be a little longer. So if you're getting this project started, so we need to have probably 12-inch sort of medium-duty zip ties, not these 10-inchers that come with the kit. But you can do a quick fix. Essentially, if you have some extra zip ties around, you can take 2 zip ties, tie them together, and now you've got a longer one, and that's what I'm going to do to get the extra length. So if I was doing it and I had infinite time to plan, I would just order some 12-inch long ones to start with, but I'm going to take some 8s and combine them. Another thing I found is that the kit didn't allow for stabilizing that air inlet pipe that connected to from behind the grill, goes down and goes into the old airbox, which we've removed. Well, that pipe is loose and floppy down in the engine or in the fender well. So driving around, it'll be banging around and making noise. So I found there was a spot where we could zip tie it firmly into place. But for that, you need a 24-inch zip tie. So this one's extra long because I had one kicking around the shop. These are 36 inches. So you're also going to need a 24-inch zip tie. It doesn't need to be super heavy duty like this one. It can just be a medium duty zip tie, 24 inches long. And you'll need a pair of those, one for each side, to anchor the Airbox air inlet pipe. It's dawned on me that we're taking out a lot of weight in the car. We're going to be removing the old air boxes and old air filters and putting in a really minimal kit. So we're actually going to get some performance gains from maybe just losing a couple of pounds. So I wanted to figure out how much the new kit weighs, and we'll weigh how much the airbox is coming out weigh. So I've got my Sweetie's kitchen scale, swiped it this morning, and I'm just going to zero this out in grams. And then let's stack all the new parts on here and see what this weighs. So the total weight is 1.211 kilograms, or 1,211 grams. And I'll weigh up the air boxes after I've got them out of the car. I've got one of the air boxes I've removed already, and throwing it on the scale here, taking the old filter, throwing it on top, and then there's some hardware a couple of nuts and the airbox mounting bolts we aren't going to reuse. And this is everything that's not going back into the car. And it comes out at basically almost exactly 2 kilograms, 1.990 kilograms. And so there'll be 2 of these air boxes. So that's going to be essentially 4 kilograms. And as I recall, we've already weighed the new filter set, so they were 1.2 kilograms. So we're going to save about 2.8 kilograms in weight, which equates to roughly 5 pounds. And if you've watched my series on power to weight ratio for the Aston Martin DB9 engine, about 8.8 pounds of weight savings is equivalent to 1 horsepower. So we're about 5/8 of a horsepower saved by just literally the weight alone. To get started, you'll already have had to have done a few things I've already posted videos on how to do. We've obviously got the car off the ground. You can get it up on jack stands. You need to take the wheel off on the side that you're worrying about. You also need to at least partially remove the fender liner. I have a video on that to take the whole thing out. Well, you could just basically undo the front half of all the bolts so that you can get access to the airbox. And then as you can see in here already, I've removed the airbox. Now, one step in removing the airbox that we haven't done in that series is that this is the mounting plate for the airbox. We're actually going to take this off. So you need a 13mm wrench to do that. And then you just remove these 2 nuts. And we will not be reusing this, so you'll be able to put these away with your the airbox you've taken out already. So I mentioned in the opener that we need this is the pipe where the cold air comes in from the grill, and that up here is where the air goes. This is the mass airflow sensor tube, and up here is where we're actually going to be attaching our new air filters to this spout. So this cold air inlet tube is what the kit really didn't make any allowance for how to stabilize it, and that's why I want to use the really long zip ties. Now on the right-hand side of the car, what there was actually a hole in this radiator shroud that you could pass a zip tie through from here and come out back here and then wrap over this. So on the right-hand side, you could do that and strap it over tight to this plastic radiator shroud. On this side, I don't want to drill any holes. So here's this mount up here that was part of the airbox mount. So I'm going to loop my my zip tie through that, and I'm going to strap this up like this. Got my really long zip tie here. Trying to put a little bend in it to begin with. There we go. And I'm going to want the plastic end somewhere where I could clip it, so that's probably the right spot. And so I'm going to take advantage of this plastic lip on here. I want to make sure I get my strap in behind it. There. So that will stop that from rattling around while I'm driving within the speed limits. And you can use a pair of side cutters. Small side cutters won't work. And trim that off. So if you ever need to service this, you just have to cut the zip tie. This isn't a permanent thing in any way. So, all right, we've got that mounted. Now we can change our focus to the mounting bracket. All right. So the next step is going to be to figure out for yourself where this bracket goes. And it took me an eon because there was no instructions that explained it, but essentially this cup part of the bracket is going to sit on the back side of this tube. On this side here, we can see the mass airflow sensor connections, and we need to make sure we don't smash that. But we're going to basically get this bracket in on the back side of the tube, and it's going to sit slid down against this lip. But here's this end of the bracket. It's really going to go on this side again with this bolt. So we're going to remove this one bolt and line it all up. So to begin with, I think that'll be my first step is let's take that bolt out. And that is a 10 millimeter. Now this is part of the frame, but it's basically just a small 10 millimeter that holds this front crash structure on. And there's many others, so you're not gonna have anything fall on you. All right, so we've got our 10 millimeter out. Now we can get our bracket more lined up. Get in here. Kind of worry about the wiring up the top a little bit. There we go. And then it doesn't sit flush immediately. So I found I needed to kind of give it a little bit of a squeeze. And at this point, I also want to see if I have to rotate it a bit, and maybe the camera angle can come in from below here on my left side. So we can see where we're lining up for that bolt, and you can sort of see that the bracket is a little cockeyed, so I need to maybe rotate around the tube a little. All right, so basically I twisted it, slid it around the tube a little bit, so now my bracket lays flat. And you'll also notice that it won't reach. You have to kind of, at the end, we'll do it in a step, you'll have to pull, we're gonna end up pulling it down just fractionally to get it to line up. But that's the general idea. So I don't want to do that pulling step until I've got it zip tied. So that's the next step, is let's get the zip ties on to strap it to the tube. So I've got it squashed onto the pipe nicely. And I'm going to fit the lower one first. And there will be just a little path up here to get the first zip tie over. So we're fitting over the top. And we're strapping the tube to the metal bracket, basically. All right. And then I'm going to clip that off. Making sure it's really snug. As snug as you can make a plastic zip tie. And I'm cutting off the scrap on the other head. So I've got one on for the lower. Now I'm going to get the upper one on. So the next step is I want to clean the grunge off of the surface. Mine's really oily, gritty. So this is where the new filter is going to attach. So I don't want it to be covered with oil and crap. So just take a cloth and clean it all up. There's an O-ring on there that we're just going to leave in place. So it's all clean. And you may be alarmed yourself when you took off your filter. You may have found, and if we can look in the end of the pipe somehow, oil that's just a tiny, skim coat of oil sometimes comes down inside the air pipe. That's the PCV valves issue that I've documented on the blog. It's nothing to be alarmed about. You may even see a little bit of oil in the inside of your air filter. Nothing's broke, nothing to fix, so just don't panic if you spot a little oil in there. So next up, we're going to get the bolt in. So basically, this one lines up pretty good. On the passenger side, or the right-hand side, I had to tug the tube down a little bit, but I'm in pretty good shape here. you know me, I'm Mr. Torque Spec. I don't have one for this. It's a 10mm wrench and I'm using a short wrench, so I'm just gonna make it nice and tight. All right, so that's torqued up, and now you can see that this is really well mounted. Their bracket and welding was perfect, clears this other bolt head nicely. So once you see how to actually fit this bracket, it works terrific. So next step will be actually getting our filter mounted. We're almost done. So now for the fun part, time to actually install the filter with the shiny bit on. Woo, jewelry. All right, for this, you need to have your nut driver handy to tighten up the band clamp. And I'm just gonna contort myself around to get this on. It goes on really easy. You're gonna wanna leave the band clamp so that you can get at it from the front. So that's it, it slips on really well. That was all there is to it. You can see now where it sits in the engine bay. And I'm going to, by braille, get on here and tighten this up. It's crushing rubber, so you don't have to go too crazy on that. And then give it a solid tug, and it's mounted. So we're pretty much done at this point, but let's have a little tour. So you can see now we're all mounted up, and we have plenty of clearance. Here's where the fender liner comes to, so there's a few inches here. And it's really going to be trapped in this chamber. And here's the fresh air still blowing on it from the front of the grill, so the air is coming in. The crud, the dead bugs and stuff, instead of being in the airbox now, are going to be sitting on top of the fender liner when you drop it out. But now, you know, we basically have a big airbox chamber that'll be able to take care of this, and it can probably even draw more air in from other areas. So that's where the enhanced breathing comes from. So just double check before you put your fender liners that you've rehooked up your side marker light. If this is all mounted, you don't have any tools left sitting on here. This is done up tight, and at this point we can go ahead and put our fender liner back in, get our wheel on, and get it back down on the ground. So with your old airboxes removed, I thought it's probably wise to talk a little bit about how to store them real quick. First off, I'm going to yank the old air filter out of the box and toss it. This is full of organics, so it'll get moldy or whatever if you're storing it for quite a while. I'm probably going to give mine a good wash up in the sink just to get rid of all the muck and gook on it. I'm also going to clean out the inside chamber where all the bugs and everything else were built up, because I want to put it away clean. I also want to not tighten up the bolts that seal the two halves together completely. There's a rubber gasket in between them, and I don't, you know, if we're going to store it, might as well not store it while it's crushed. So maybe it'll be a little resilient if we ever go back to using it. So these are just going to be held in place. And then probably, I have this extra hardware, mounting hardware. I'm going to put this in a Ziploc bag, and I'm going to put that inside the box. So essentially the whole thing can sit self-contained up on a shelf in your garage if you ever need it again. And I also put a few of there's the one bracket we took off. Instead of leaving it mounted in the car, I took it off and I mounted it to the airbox. So anyways, put it all away tidy, and it'll be there for you if you need it again. So a quick word about how I think we're going to need to change our maintenance schedule when we're using these. This overall I think has less surface area. That's how it allows it to breathe. It's a little more open. So that's where the performance comes from. So rather than every 2 years getting in here and having a look at this air filter, I'm probably going to change to a 1-year inspection of this. And if it looks dirty, I'm going to pop it off and give it a wash. I'm probably going to use K&N Performance Air Cleaner solution. So they have a cleaning solution where you can spray it on. It gets the dirt to loosen up, and then you can use a hose and you rinse from the inside out to blow off all the crap that had accumulated, and then you let it air dry, and then there's a K&N re-oiling solution that I'm going to apply lightly to get it ready to go back in the car. So probably once a year, you'll see me do maintenance to this instead of waiting every 2 years. And I'll probably do an actual video that shows you how to do that after a year's time has passed. So overall, that was a pretty straightforward project. Took about 2 hours, you know, an hour per side. You spend most of your time getting into where that airbox is, getting it out. But you can see, you know, got both airboxes out now. Like I said, it'll be about 5 pounds less weight. Hopefully some more horsepower. In a future video, you're going to see me dyno test this setup now, with the only change being these air filters. So we'll see if it's added a little bit more power, maybe in the mid-range or high end. So it was a pretty satisfying project. Up here, you'll see my latest video on whatever's cool and new that's happening. Down here, you're going to see the companion blog article that goes along with this. You'll find links to where you can buy the Velocity AP Airbox Delete Kit, and a list of all the tools and things like that. Down here, if you like videos like this, please subscribe. And as always, I like to hear your comments. Please leave those down below. Thanks for watching.